Story 1, The House on Breyer Hill. Chapter 1, The Inheritance. I hadn't spoken to my Uncle Richard in over 15 years. I wouldn't say we were close. He was a recluse, the type of man who appeared at family gatherings once every decade and left before dessert. The last time I saw him, I was 12. He gave me a chess set made of carved bone and told me not to play with it after midnight. That was the extent of our relationship. So when I received a formal letter from a law firm in Massachusetts informing me of his death, and the inheritance he left behind, I assumed there had been some mistake. I didn't even know he owned property. But the letter was clear: I was the sole heir to a manor called Breyer Hill, located in the forests near Ashbrook. At first, I wasn't going to go. But something in the wording of the letter gave me pause. The will had specific instructions: I was to visit the house alone. I was to stay for at least one night. And I was not to sell it until after I had heard its story. That phrase stuck with me. 2 weeks later, I took unpaid leave from work and drove north. The directions led me deeper into Massachusetts than I'd ever been, to a small town that barely registered on GPS. From there, it was a 15-minute drive into the woods along a cracked asphalt road overgrown with moss and tree roots. Breyer Hill was imposing. A looming Victorian structure with a steep roof, weathered stone foundation, and tall, dark windows that reflected nothing. The trees surrounding it seemed taller than any I'd passed on the drive-in, leaning unnaturally toward the structure like curious onlookers. The front door was already unlocked. Inside, the air was stale but dry. The furniture was old, but covered to protect it from dust. Everything looked paused, like someone had left in a hurry but expected to return. There was no electricity, just old gas lamps and a wood stove. The kitchen had a rotary phone mounted to the wall. I set my bag down and explored the first floor. Parlor, dining room, library, all lined with paintings of people who looked vaguely familiar. Their eyes seemed to follow me. I tried not to let that get to me. Upstairs, the hallway stretched longer than expected, with 6 bedrooms and a study. I chose the least creepy-looking room: no portraits, no mirrors, and the bed didn't creak when I sat on it. That night, I barely slept. Not because of fear. Just restlessness. The silence in the house wasn't like normal silence. It was heavy, like pressure against my ears. Twice I thought I heard footsteps downstairs. The second time, I got up and checked. Nothing. At some point past midnight, I heard a soft knock. I froze in bed, listening. Another knock. 3 gentle taps. Not on my bedroom door, but somewhere deeper in the house. Then silence again. In the morning, I told myself it was pipes, or wood settling. I made coffee with bottled water and sat on the front steps, letting the weak sunlight convince me it was all in my head. Then I found the note. It was in the library, tucked between the pages of an old leather-bound volume about American folklore. The note was handwritten, in my uncle's jagged scrawl. Do not trust the mirrors. Do not go into the basement. Do not let it hear your name. I read it 3 times before folding it into my pocket. That was when I realized something strange. The house didn't have a basement. Or at least, I hadn't seen any door leading to one. And yet, that night, I heard knocking again. Closer. Slower. And this time, when I checked the hallway, one of the mirrors had moved.
Chapter 2, The Locked Room. The next morning, I went looking for the mirror. The one that had moved. I remembered it clearly, an oval-shaped antique that hung across from the stairwell, framed in dull brass with little flaking patterns at the edges. But it was gone. In its place was a faint rectangle on the wall, a lighter patch where the wallpaper hadn't aged quite as much. Like the mirror had never been there, or had been removed years ago. I stood staring at that blank spot for a while, unsure if I was more disturbed by the disappearance or by the idea that I might have imagined it. Back in the hallway, I decided to check the rest of the upstairs more thoroughly. I had passed by all the bedroom doors the day before, but one of them, at the far end of the hall, had been locked. I hadn't thought much of it then. Old houses had locked doors. Maybe a closet. Maybe storage. But now, I wasn't so sure. I tried the handle again. Still locked. No give. I examined the doorframe. The wood around the knob was scratched, faintly gouged, like someone had tried to pry it open with a tool. There was no keyhole on the outside. Just below the knob, however, I noticed something strange. Carved into the wood, tiny and precise, was a series of numbers. 0417. A code? A date? I took out my phone and typed it into my notes. When I looked up, I swore I heard something behind the door. Not movement exactly. More like a breath. I stepped back and left the hallway. Later that day, I explored the study. It was filled with books on the occult, folklore, anatomy, and several journals that belonged to my uncle. Most were nonsense, ramblings about echoes, patterns in the mirror, and diagrams of the house drawn by him. But one entry stood out. It was dated 2 months before he died. I hear it whispering now. From the locked room. I shouldn't have opened it. I won't again. But it's awake now. It watches through the glass. I tried to hide the entrance, but I think it remembers. That night, I placed a chair in front of the door to the locked room. I don't know why. Maybe to keep it from opening. Maybe to convince myself I still had control. At 2:46 a.m., I was woken by the sound of the chair scraping across the floor. Not away from the door. Toward it. Chapter 3, The Reflection That Wasn't Mine. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in bed with the covers pulled up, staring at the door. Listening. At some point, the scraping sound stopped. But I never heard the chair return to its original place. By morning, I felt like I had aged a decade. I checked the hallway. The chair was back in front of the door. Exactly how I had left it. Or, how it had been before it moved. Either way, it was there now. Like the house wanted to reset the scene, pretending nothing happened. Later, I noticed something else. In the bathroom mirror, my reflection blinked twice. I hadn't. It was subtle, just a moment of delay. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I tested it again, moving my head left and right. Raising a hand. Everything matched. Until it didn't. There was a flicker, like static on an old TV screen. And for a split second, my reflection smiled. I didn't. I stumbled backward out of the bathroom and shut the door. My heart pounded in my ears. I stood in the hallway for what felt like 10 full minutes before opening it again. The mirror looked normal. I tapped it. Cold glass. My reflection matched me perfectly now, as if daring me to call it a liar. I went downstairs and avoided mirrors for the rest of the day. That evening, I read more of my uncle's journals. One entry described a rift between glass and thought, where reflections weren't just light and angle, but memory. Shadows. Intent. He wrote. I caught my reflection watching me when I wasn't looking. It reacts too quickly now. It knows me too well. I think it's becoming me. That night, I covered every mirror in the house with blankets and sheets. I even used the cloth furniture covers from the parlor. When I got to the upstairs hallway, I hesitated. There was a small, square mirror at the end I hadn't noticed before. It was dusty, and its frame was cracked. When I approached it, the glass shimmered faintly. Not like water. More like heat rising off asphalt. I reached out to cover it, and my reflection stayed still. My hand kept moving. It didn't. I gasped and yanked the sheet over the glass. My hands trembled. As I turned to go back to my room, I heard it, clear as day, whispered from behind the mirror. "Why did you cover my face?" Chapter 4, The Root Cellar. I woke up to the sound of my name being whispered. Not shouted. Not spoken. Whispered, like someone trying not to wake the others. Only there were no others. The voice came from somewhere downstairs. I grabbed the flashlight and a fire poker from the fireplace. My steps were slow, deliberate. Each floorboard creaked louder than I remembered. When I reached the bottom of the staircase, the whispering stopped. That's when I noticed the draft. Cold air was coming from the far end of the kitchen, where I knew there hadn't been any windows. I turned the flashlight in that direction and saw something I hadn't noticed before. A seam in the wall. Almost invisible, running down a panel like a door had once been cut into it and sealed. I pressed my hand to it. It was cooler than the rest of the wall. There were faint scuff marks on the floor nearby, arcs in the dust, as if something had been opened recently. I tapped it. Hollow. I felt around the edges until my fingers brushed something metal, an old latch, almost flush with the paneling. I slid it. The wall creaked, then popped open an inch. Behind it, stone steps leading down into pitch black. So the house did have a basement. The air that came out smelled of mildew, iron, and something faintly sweet, like rotting fruit. I shone the flashlight down and saw only the first few steps before the light disappeared into darkness. I should have turned back. Instead, I stepped inside. The stone walls dripped with condensation. The steps were uneven, each one groaning under my weight. As I descended, the air grew heavier, thicker. The flashlight's beam began to flicker. When I reached the bottom, I found myself in a narrow corridor with packed dirt floors and wooden support beams. Shelves lined the walls, empty, except for one. It held a single jar. I walked closer. Inside the jar was something floating in cloudy liquid. I couldn't tell what it was at first. Then I realized, it was an eye. Human. Open. Staring. I staggered back, knocking over a crate. The noise echoed unnaturally, like it bounced off more walls than were actually present. That's when I heard the footsteps above me. Slow. Methodical. Then a click. The door at the top of the stairs had shut. I ran back up, nearly slipping, and shoved at the door. It didn't move. I was locked in. And from the other side, I heard someone, no, something, say my name again. Only this time, it said it perfectly. Not the way a stranger says your name. The way you say your name. Like it had learned. Chapter 5, The Jar and the Journal. The door wouldn't budge. I pounded on it, kicked it, even rammed my shoulder into it until pain shot down my arm, but it stayed shut. Behind me, the cellar was dead silent. No footsteps now. No whispers. Just stillness. But somehow, that was worse. The flashlight flickered again. I slapped it, and it steadied just long enough to sweep across the shelves. I needed a way out, or a weapon. That's when I saw the crate I'd knocked over. It had split open, revealing a bundle wrapped in moldy cloth. I crouched down, unwrapped it, and found an old, leather-bound journal. The cover was damp and curling at the edges. No title. Just a deep scratch across the surface, as if someone had tried to erase it. Inside were cramped handwritten entries. The ink bled in places, but I could make out a name. Elias Breyer. The original owner. Most of the early pages were rambling notes about crop yields and weather, but about halfway through, the tone changed. The mirror in the upstairs hall moved again last night. I watched it happen. It turned itself, slightly, toward the door. It mimics now. Not just my face, it knows my voice. It said my name at 3:33 a.m., and it sounded like me. I almost answered. I think it came from below. From whatever grandfather sealed under the root cellar. I tried to block it in. But it's learning. My skin went cold. I flipped to the last entry, written in a frantic scrawl. If you are reading this, it means I failed. Don't let it see you. Don't respond when it speaks. Don't trust your own reflection. The flashlight gave one final flicker, and died. Total darkness. I froze. For a full minute, I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then I heard it again. From the bottom of the stairs, just a few feet behind me. Why are you reading that? It was my voice. Exactly my voice. I turned, heart hammering, and saw a faint glow. Not light, but reflection. The eye jar was glowing. And in the glass, a face appeared. Not mine. Not exactly. Like mine, if I were rotting from the inside out. It smiled. Let me out, it whispered, grinning wider. I know how you think. Chapter 6, The Duplicate. I don't remember falling asleep. I remember the terror. The sound of my own voice whispering from the darkness. The reflection in the jar. The journal clutched in my hands. But at some point, sleep must have taken me. Or something like it. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in the cellar. I was lying in my bed. Sunlight filtered through the lace curtains. Birds chirped faintly outside. Everything was normal. Too normal. I sat up slowly, the journal still clutched to my chest. It was dry now. Clean. No mildew. No water damage. And the last few pages, the ones warning me about reflections, were missing. I checked the hallway. All the mirrors were uncovered. One of them, the long one outside the study, had been cleaned. No dust. No smears. As if someone had wiped it while I slept. That's when I saw myself in it. But it wasn't me. He moved a fraction too early. Blinked when I didn't. And then he did something I didn't. He smiled. I backed away from the mirror, heart racing. Downstairs, the house was bright. Fresh. Someone had lit the stove. Coffee brewed in the kitchen. The smell hit me like a trap. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, and saw myself standing at the foot of the stairs. Not a reflection. Not a hallucination. Me. Same clothes. Same face. Same expression, almost. But his eyes were too still. Are you okay? He asked. My voice. Perfect. I couldn't answer. He stepped closer. I stepped back. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said with a grin. I ran. Out the front door, down the path, into the woods. The trees seemed closer now, leaning harder into the path. I didn't stop until I reached the main road. When I looked back, the house was gone. Just thick woods. But I knew it was still there. Watching. And I knew that whatever had stepped out of that mirror. It was wearing me now. Chapter 7, The Descent. The mirrors screamed. Not with sound, but with movement, violent, flickering movement, as if every reflection across the house had become its own living, writhing thing. I turned away from them, but they didn't stop. They followed me with empty eyes and silent mouths stretched too wide. And I knew, the house wasn't haunted. It was inhabited. I staggered back into the hall and saw the root cellar door hanging open again. No light. No sound. Just blackness. But I understood now, it wasn't just a cellar. It was a mouth. And it wanted me back. I descended the steps, one by one. This time, the flashlight didn't flicker. This time, it welcomed me. The light fell onto dirt walls that pulsed like skin. The beams creaked and groaned, not from age, but from breathing. Far ahead, in the tunnel beneath the house, something stood, shaped like me, but not me. It held the jar. The eye inside was gone. "I've been waiting," it said in my voice. But now the voice was wrong. Crooked. Echoing. "Why me?" I asked. It smiled. Not cruel. Not kind. Just, inevitable. "Because you looked too long. And now we see you." Behind it, mirrors lined the walls underground, cracked and sagging, but still reflecting. Each one held a different version of me. Some angry. Some weeping. One banging silently on glass. And in the farthest mirror, I saw something else. Not me. Not human. It turned slowly. And began to walk toward the glass. Toward here. Chapter 8, Through the Glass. It stepped closer to the mirror. That thing, not me, not human, stared through the fractured glass as if it could see me standing on the other side. And somehow, it could. The reflection in every mirror twisted at once. Some versions of me screamed. Others clawed at the inside of the glass. One just laughed. I backed away, but the tunnel itself seemed to bend and close behind me. There was no going back. The creature, the original, the source, placed its hand against the mirror's surface. The glass didn't shatter. It rippled. It was coming through. I turned and ran. My flashlight cut in and out, revealing flashes of my own terrified face in each mirror I passed. Some begged for help. One mouthed a warning. "It's not a house. It's a gate." The earth rumbled. The support beams groaned like bones under pressure. I reached the top of the stairs, the cellar door wide open again. I dove through and slammed it shut behind me. For the first time, it stayed shut. The house was silent. Every mirror was blank. I was alone. Or so I thought. In the reflection of the glass cabinet door by the fireplace, I saw myself. But I hadn't moved. I was frozen in place, staring. Breathing. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. And then, very slowly, the reflection blinked. Out of sync. It wasn't over. Epilogue. They found me weeks later, walking along Route 19. Dazed. Barefoot. Mute. I told them I was fine. I wasn't. I sleep with every mirror covered. Every reflective surface taped over. I haven't seen my face in months. But I feel it watching me. Waiting. I know now, I never left that house. Not really. And one day soon. I think the one who did will come back.